Life Audio.
Hi, my name is Jeff King. I'm the president of persecution.org and one of the world's leading experts on religious freedom. I focus on spiritual growth, religious freedom, and persecution around the globe. You're listening to Faith Under Fire. Hey, I'm going to be interviewing Michael Matt, who is the head of Remnant, the National Catholic newspaper since 1967, as well as you can find him on remnant-tv.com. Conservative Catholic, fascinating guy. And I just got to start by saying, look, I think a lot of people are going to be wondering, for so long, for centuries, Protestants and Catholics don't talk to each other. And that's changing. That's changing a lot today. But I think a lot of people, if you're a conservative Catholic or evangelical, you're going to be like, why am I listening to this guy? That's in the other camp, and they have different theology. And I think that's the power in what we're doing today. There's so much we have in common. And I say, look, we are surrounded. So people of faith, conservative people of faith are surrounded. And that's, first of all, Protestants and Catholics, but it goes beyond that with the Jews and Mormons and even Muslims. And so I just think we need to be working together. And you just think about us as Christians and Catholics, what do we have in common? We both want to see the Lord lifted up. We want to see him restore the world. We want to see him restore the lost, the lost of this world. We want to see his name lifted up. We want to see righteousness lifted up. There's so much. So anyways, that's why we are going to be talking together today. Tell me, that's my opening speech. Tell me what you have to say about that. Tell me your thoughts.
Well, first of all, Jeff, thanks very much for having me on. I appreciate it. This is a really interesting moment, as you were just laying out so eloquently, for all of us, because the enemies of everything that we hold sacred are no longer making a significant distinction between Protestants and Catholics and the various camps within those denominations or within Catholicism. And I think it's very important for us to realize this, that we need to have conversations. You said, we talked earlier, we said something about circling the wagons. That might be the only thing so far I might disagree a little bit with, because I'm really not in the mood to circle the wagons anymore. I'm in the mood to go on offense. I really am. So I would agree with circling the wagons in the sense that we get together, circle them a little bit in the evening maybe, figure out what we're going to do, and then go to war in the morning. So. Because we haven't declared this war. Maybe we should have a long time ago as Christians, but they certainly have, the enemies of the cross certainly have declared war on us. And so I think I absolutely agree with what you said earlier when we were talking. It's not a matter of covering up our theological differences in order to get along. I think we're going to find out over the next 45 minutes, I guess, how much you and I agree on this, but I think what we're talking about is true ecumenism, not the fake, false ecumenism that says matters of doctrine and dogma or Bible don't matter as much as the human, getting along, the brotherhood of man. That's a Masonic idea that I think probably we both reject. But I think it's really important to have a true ecumenical conversation right now, because let's face it, in the course of when we realize that we're all under attack, two things are going to happen. We're going to put together a better offensive strategy against the true haters of Jesus Christ. And at the same time, I think the opportunities are going to present themselves where guys like you and I can also, in a friendly and charitable way, discuss our theological differences along the way, if you will. If you think of it as a battlefield, and we're fighting a common enemy during the day, and maybe in the evenings over our meals, over our glass of beer, we can then also discuss our theological differences, the things that keep us from being a stronger army of Jesus Christ. So I salute you for doing this. We do the same thing a lot. We have conversations with people who are not Catholic. In fact, we just posted a video, ironically enough, of an interview that I did of a Maasai tribesman over in Tanzania in Africa. And that was the same kind of thing. Here we're supposed to hate each other. We have completely different religion, different skin color and everything. And what do you know? Once these globalists got out of the way, we found that we were brothers that had a very serious, not only a conversation, but common concerns about what they're trying to do to the family and to culture and to tradition. So kudos to you. Way to go. I'm glad you're doing this show. I'm following your work, and it's fantastic.
Yeah, and I don't know how articulate I was that you said that, but that was well said. Love it. And let me back up a little. So let's introduce people to you. Just tell us who you are, your family background, what do you stand for, what are you trying to do?
Okay, so it's a long history. I know you don't even have a fraction of the time to let me indulge myself by telling the whole story, but I would just say it would be important for people to realize that back at the turn of the 20th century, so we're talking the 1890s, 1880s, well, actually 1860s, over the course of the turn of the century, there were a lot of problems in the German community, German Catholic community, with Freemasonry attacking especially the immigrants in this country. So there was a pope called Pope Leo XIII who called on Catholic newspaper men to recognize this problem and to try to help especially the German and Austrian immigrants sort of kick back against this effort. And so my great-grandfather, in fact, my great-grandfather, a guy by the name of Klaproth, he wrote a book called, this is not a shameless plug, I just happen to have his book sitting here from an earlier show. He wrote a book called Letters to My Protestant Friend, because he was a Lutheran, and he converted. It's a beautiful book if your folks are interested. So he started the Wanderer newspaper for that purpose. And then my grandfather, Joseph Matt, made it into, during the 1930s, made it into an English language. It had been a German magazine. And it had the distinction, it was called The Wanderer before it became the Remnant, or before the Remnant was born. It had the distinction during the war years, during the 1940s, early 1940s, to be condemned in the pages of Pravda by the Soviets, by the Stalinist Soviets, and also to be banned by the Hitler regime from being mailed back to German readers in Germany at the time. So we're always very proud of that. We got hit by all the bad guys, And so that's where the roots of it, and it formed this magazine here. It's called the Remnant newspaper, started in 1967, and for your audience, this might be interesting. My father then split off right after what's called the Second Vatican Council in the Catholic Church, which was a really sad moment in our church, where you had the church basically saying, okay, it's kind of doing what Trump is doing right now. Basically, the Catholic Church said, we can't win wars if we don't go out and kind of change our rigid teachings on morality and and all these different things, and we have to make it a softer church, a gentler church, and all of this stuff. And it was a cataclysmic move. It's only a move in the human element of the Catholic Church, but it was a disastrous move, in my opinion. So they changed the liturgy. They got rid of the old Latin Mass. They changed the doctrines and the dogma. And from that moment forward, you see Catholic schools closing, you see Catholic churches closing, and you see huge percentages of people simply leaving the Catholic Church. So basically, what we do now is we haven't reinvented the wheel. We're faithful, loyal Catholics. I go to Mass every Sunday. We're just basically trying to live the faith and defend the faith as it was handed down literally from our fathers. We haven't changed anything. We're just traditional Catholics who believe in the traditional teachings of the Church, liturgy of the Church, something which we now see as the church gets attacked so vigorously, and from within, not just from the outside. We have really terrible people running our church right now, in my opinion, who don't resemble true Catholics as they should, in my opinion. I humbly submit that they don't. There's a full-scale civil war going on in the Catholic Church right now, and we're just part of that. We're the traditional side of that civil war. It's been going on for a long time, but especially since Vatican II, and then it really reached a fever pitch with the arrival of Pope Francis, who of course is a very much of a globalist, modernist pope who has no interest whatsoever in what we do, which is to try to preserve the traditions of our faith.
Yeah, well said. And tell me, go ahead and you can start listing them and come back to them, or just go one by one and break them down. Tell me what you think the biggest threats to the Catholic faith are right now.
Well, there's an old Latin axiom, lex orandi, lex credendi, which means as you pray, this is how you believe. And I think all of us kind of know that's already true from personal experience. If you're a sloppy prayer, you're probably going to be a pretty sloppy believer. So liturgically, where that has always been applied is if the liturgy gets sort of watered down to something that's not recognizable or something that's being experimented upon, the faithful are going to believe in the same lax manner of sort of nonchalant, non-committed, just weak and watered down theology, which is precisely what's happened. So I think I would start with liturgy, and then I would move on to the fact that the Catholic Church has really decided that she's going to join the world in almost every way possible. Yes. You can see it now with the whole Bill Gates Sustainable Development Goals, the United Nations, and almost always the third or fourth. You're going to go Klaus Schwab, and then you're going to go Pope Francis. So you really see how there's been an effort to use the moral authority and the spiritual authority of the Catholic Church, which, whatever you think of the Catholic Church, it's a statistical fact that it's the largest Christian denomination in the world. So
Yeah.
I think that's why the globalists want the
Yeah.
power of the Catholic Church to enforce something that's very antithetical to Christianity throughout the whole world. So I would say that number two thing would be basically a Catholic surrender that's gone on. We no longer are secure in our own faith and our own teachings. And so we've watered everything down. There's been a surrender. The world, for the most part, doesn't take us very seriously unless you're a Nancy Pelosi or a Biden or a Klaus Schwab who wants to use the Catholic Church, what's left of the Catholic Church,
Yep.
for your own political ambitions. But other than that, the church isn't taken very seriously. The Catholic bishops are not taken very seriously anymore. You can see that again right now. Donald Trump, who's going soft on abortion. Well, part of the reason he's going soft on abortion is because the Catholic Church is soft on abortion. Part of the reason he's gone soft on gay marriage is because the Catholic Church has gone soft on gay marriage. So you can really, it doesn't take a genius to see how, when you have these great bulwarks of Christian fidelity and the defense of morality, when they become soft and weak. I know this is happening in the Baptist Church as well. When they start going weak, in a lot of Christian denominations, well, everything begins to fall apart. And that's true in spades with the Catholic Church, because they really have had a serious revolution in the church, no longer taken seriously, siding more with globalists than they are with traditionalists. And the repercussions from that are not just being felt by Catholics, they're being felt by everyone right now. There's a you know this better as well as I do, there's such a decline in morality in our society that it's requiring a drastic Christian reset, and the Catholic Church should be the one for leading the charge to get that conversation going. Instead, the Catholic Church is fixated on climate change and open borders and that sort of thing coming out of the Vatican. So I think that's a real serious crisis.
Let me pause there. That is
Sure.
so well said. And what's so interesting is I think everything you just said could be said about the evangelical church as well. So we don't have a monolithic structure, but there's that feeling under pressure, feeling under attack, kowtowing to the world, softening our stance, softening our messages, the liturgy, if you will, softening the message in the church, afraid to be canceled. And here's what I see overseas. This is interesting because I deal with persecution all over the world, right? And I've seen every game around the globe with dictators, despots, and all the political games. And so, around the world, what you see is this game where a dictator says, we have religious freedom. But now what that means practically is that you can think anything you want in your home. Don't bring it into the public square. Don't express it, and don't spread it. So that is what's going on. That's the attack, the same attack that's happening in the West. And that the left has even accepted this and said that that's a good and right thing. And too many pastors, so it's pastors, bishops, all of them, that are kowtowing to this and feeling the pressure and afraid of getting canceled, and without a mindset that we're supposed to be a revolutionary force in this world. We're supposed to be, at a certain level, not in hatred, but at a certain level, we're supposed to be at war with the world.
Sure.
We have been called into the kingdom of God, and we're to reform the world. And the problem isn't us. The problem is who we represent and the scriptures. That's a giant stop sign, a giant cultural stop sign to the world.
Yeah. I know it's a scandal that I think supersedes almost anything that's ever happened before, because you've always had Christian persecution. Right back to the beginning, that's how we got started. That's how Christianity began, the Colosseum with the lions, the persecution of the Christians.
Yeah.
But now when you see, for example, with the big scandal that just happened in the Catholic Church, where Pope Francis, for some reason, God knows why, comes out and says, you can, whatever you think of gay marriage, whatever your position is on this, you can imagine how this went over when the Pope, after 2,000 years of really adhering to a biblical-based, prohibition against sodomy, comes out and for some reason says, we want to bless, it's not marriage, we're not calling it marriage, but we want to bless homosexual couples. Just bless them because they deserve a blessing. Well, this world is not theologically prepared anymore to make that distinction at all. So all they see is the most recognized Christian religious leader in the world saying he wants to bless homosexual, which looks like marriage. And when you factor in the fact that many of these couples are already married, civilly married, they are getting a blessing from the church, which becomes really, really gray as far as why that isn't a blessing, a marital blessing. Okay, so when you see that happening, and then you take that whole scandal and you look how it played out in Africa, in places like Nigeria, which you
Yeah.
know better than I do, Christian
Yep.
persecution is going,
Yep.
it's just skyrocketing. And the bishops of Africa are saying, holy cow,
Yeah.
if we can't stand by our biblical principles on things like this, we're going to get destroyed. Persecution is
Yes.
going to get much worse, you know.
Yep.
And there didn't seem to be a lot of concern on the part of the Vatican. All the Vatican said to that was, well, that's a cultural thing in Africa. They'll catch up. I mean, that's a scandal. You know, it really truly is.
Yeah. And question for you, if the Pope is saying anything publicly, is there any offhand comment? Is there any, public musings, or is it strategic and thought out and absolutely dissected before it's thrown out to the public?
Well, a lot of the people, my brothers and sisters who are Catholic, they want it to be the former, I guess. They want it to be like what's bad translations. It was on an airplane. It was a presser. My opinion on that is that there's been too much of this now. We can no longer this is the age of the internet. First of all, you can't blame the translation, a bad translation. Just go ahead and Google translate it yourself if you're wondering about the translation. But I think more than that, this is a spiritual leader who is always in the public eye. He has a much greater responsibility than anyone else on the face of the earth to make sure he gets it right. And I think when he comes out and says these things and he understands the scandal and then he will not retract and he will not clarify, to me it says, all he'll ever say is, hey, you know what, marriage is between one man and one woman. And he expects that to sort of cover what just happened, because I'm not saying gay marriage, but we're men of the world. We know what that means. That's a game that they play in order to kind of have their cake and eat it too. And that's why I think it's a massive scandal. I pray for the Pope. But I don't think it's by accident. I think he came into this position in order to fundamentally change the Catholic Church, which means to reset and retranslate and have a new understanding of biblical prohibitions, even where morality is concerned, which is something that should terrify everybody who's looking for the future of their family. Yeah.
And Michael, I don't know if you're a student of prophecy, but you look into the old prophets and what they talked about in the end times and what would happen to the church abroad. Yeah. And is this ringing a bell? Am I hitting a nerve here?
Well, of course. Yeah, everybody's wondering that. Is this the false prophet?
The great falling away too.
Absolutely. Is this the great apostasy? I mean, even Pope John Paul made reference to the great apostasy. He was speaking about Europe. Well, was he right? Of course he was right. Did you see the Olympics? Yeah, of course, this is the great apostasy,
Yeah.
Where they're not even afraid now to come right out and blaspheme God himself, I think prophecy comes into it. I think, touching back on your particular line of work, we tell the stories of the martyrs, and we tell them with pride, and I'm talking in history. Yep. But it does seem like not one of us is taking, not enough of us are taking that seriously in terms of what we might be required to do. I mean, if we're not prepared, it seems to me, and I'm just a humble lay guy, just a guy, but looking at the great stories of Christianity and how it got started, if we're not prepared to actually stand up and at least hope and pray to be strong enough to give our lives for what we say we believe, all is lost. So we need to stop talking about martyrdom in terms of this beautiful thing that others are called to, and we start having the conversations like we're having right now, like maybe we are. And maybe that means we have to sit and talk to our children or grandchildren about what that might look like and whether or not we have the chops, the strength, the grace to do it. But if we don't start talking about it now, it's a problem. I've always said that if I think I need to die for my faith, and you and a lot of my friends are all standing around the scaffolding the day of the execution, and they're all like, you don't have to do this, man. Don't do this. How much harder that would be. But if all of you are saying, no, you're doing the right thing. This is what we're all going to do. You're first, but we're all right behind you. It's going to make a big difference. So I've always said that martyrdom, essentially, the triumph of martyrdom, how it means victory for the forces of good in the army of God, is that every martyr in history, right before he lost his head, right before he was executed, he looks at all of his brothers and sisters who are standing out there and he said, they failed, they didn't get me, I still believe. This is the greatest message, the greatest gift he can give. And it's from there that you have the rebirth of Christianity.
Yeah, the kingdom of heaven speaks to the world, and then the world takes notice and says, my gosh, there must be something to this.
Right.
Hey, let's take a quick break. We're going to hear from our sponsor, and I'll be right back. All right, brother, my heart is on fire. Oh my gosh, love your message, love your heart. Let's continue with the greatest threats to the Catholic Church. So you've kind of touched on one, and so I think you've kind of already broached the subject. And this is one, of course, it's been disastrous for the church as a whole. But I was watching one of your videos about the pedophile debacle over the last 30 years, and I saw you at the Vatican. So talk to us about that. How has that affected things?
Well, it's really getting difficult. And again, I really want to stress this. I don't want to scandalize your audience or any Catholics that might see this from my audience. I'm a faithful Catholic. It hurts to have to admit this. But if no one's going to, then the stones are going to cry out. So it's time for the stones, and that's what maybe I'm just a blockhead, but it's time for us to speak out on this. And I was at the Vatican. And I remember this last time that we went after the Archbishop Vigano. I don't know if that name is familiar to you or not, but he blew the whistle on the Ted McCarrick scandal, the greatest pedophile scandal in the history of the church. Pope Francis says, "I will say nothing about this." And what do you know? He basically never did. Huge scandal. So they had this little sex summit in Rome. And heading it up this time was Cardinal Supich, who had awarded Cardinal McCarrick. I don't want to drop too many names, but he had actually given a Spirit of Francis award to Cardinal McCarrick, who's the biggest sex offender in the history of the church, supposedly before he knew anything. But still, the scandal then of having Cardinal Supich head up the sex summit in the Vatican to address pedophilia, it was just a scandal. But it was Delia Gallagher, who was a CNN correspondent, who asked the relevant question, and I was standing right there when she did. She said a few years ago, it was another one of you guys was standing up here. His name was Cardinal McCarrick, and he was promising the world that the Catholic Church was going to do something about the pedophilia scandal. Now he's like the #1 offender. And she said, again, Delia Gallagher, CNN, she said, "Why would we believe, what makes you think we should believe you now that you're going to do something about it?" And this is the sort of heartbreaking for a Catholic, as we love our church, the heartbreaking thing. You see, on the one hand, it's easy to understand. I think the Catholic Church has been infiltrated by evil forces, so in a way that helps me believe even more strongly in my church. Like something big and evil is really trying to destroy this church and infiltrate this church. And everything about the church, the divine element of the church, I believe, all her doctrines, all her dogma, the priesthood, everything. I still believe everything. But this evil infiltration and the human element has taken place, and that has shattered the credibility of the Catholic Church. Understandably so. Absolutely shattered the moral authority of the Catholic Church. And again, that doesn't just affect us. I remember after that, I mentioned the Second Vatican Council. I remember after the council happened and the Catholic Church kind of hoisted this white flag of surrender. And there was a very popular radio show guy by the name of Harvey, Paul Harvey. Paul Harvey, I'm pretty sure you know that name.
Now for the rest of the story.
He wrote to my father, and he said, "I'm not a Catholic, but this is a very frightening moment." He said, the light in the lighthouse just went out for all of us as the Catholic Church surrenders. Yes. So I always say to people, please don't take what I'm saying as something just to be sort of a Catholic beef. We all need to understand the ramifications of this for Christianity as a whole, which, take us back to the top of this show, makes it really important for all of us to have conversations. Where can we come together on this, and how can we fight back? Really, really important, because we're basically coming pretty close to being abandoned sheep at this point.
It is heartbreaking, and any any Protestant, any evangelical, oh my gosh, look, the pedophiles are attracted to the church because they can get to the kids. And whether that's through the priests or through being a church or a youth pastor, and the scandals with televangelist head pastors, listen, it goes on and on and on. We are broken. We're human beings that are completely broken.
Yeah.
And our only hope is the Lord. So there's no rocks to be thrown, but it is incredibly refreshing to hear this voice for reform and for honesty, and just because it affects all of us. And this is the way the world thinks of us. They think, oh, well, that's who you people are. You're,
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, gosh. Right. Listen, you mentioned Archbishop Vigano, I think it is. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did a news release recently on him, and I kind of got put in my place. It's like some strong Catholics were like, hey, shut up. Pay attention to your own stuff. But I was just lifting him up because, oh my gosh, can you explain who was he? Who is he? And what is his history and what happened to him?
Well, he was a nuncio. He was a papal nuncio to the United States during Pope Benedict XVI's reign. And I got to be pretty good friends with him. I've met him, I published him for a long time. And I think that the main usefulness for him as an example or as an exhibit for your audience, for example, would be that this is not some traditional Catholic who never went along with Vatican II. This was a mainstream Catholic bishop, Italian bishop, who was very, very successful, rose all the way to the top,
Yeah.
even in the Vatican. Nuncio to the United States, who's like an ambassador to the United States, which is a big deal. And so he's the one that when he looked at the pedophile scandal, especially involving Cardinal McCarrick, he began to unpeel the onion, and he began to see corruption in the church that was so great that he had to speak out against his own, again, against the human element of his own church, which was a huge cross for him.
Well, speak up for the Lord. Yeah.
Exactly right. Speak up for Christ, speak up for Christ's church, in defense of the children, of the victims of all this. And basically, he was shut down. And what's really interesting is that Cardinal McCarrick, who's the man that Archbishop Vigano was trying to expose, or trying to get the Vatican to really, rein this whole dirty mess in, he never was really disciplined. He was laicist. He never ended up in prison, where, in my opinion, he should have ended up. He's in a nursing home right now. He's going to live out his golden years, having pudding out in the main dining room or whatever. Nothing really terrible happened to him. Whereas Archbishop Vigano,
Yeah.
who is the whistleblower, ends up getting excommunicated by the Vatican for saying of Pope Francis, well, man, I'm not sure if this guy's even the Pope, because he won't act like a Pope. You know what I mean? So it's there's all sorts of Catholic theology in here that my Catholic friends and I might disagree on over Archbishop Vigano, but for somebody looking in from the outside, it's just a massive scandal. They just look in, an evangelical just looking from the outside. What? The Vatican got rid of Archbishop Vigano, the whistleblower? Who does that? Nobody does that, but they excommunicated him, So it really is a teaching moment for how high the corruption goes in the Catholic Church. And they have all sorts of great excuses for why it happened like this. Of
course,
but most people aren't paying attention to those excuses. They're just looking at what happened. And it's a huge scandal. So that's the one thing I would say in defense of my church, and praise God, there are so many bishops and cardinals that are coming forward now, and they're saying, hang on a second, this is not right,
Yeah.
So we have an infiltration at the very top at the moment under Pope Francis. I hope and pray that he converts. I hope all your audience will do the same, that he wakes up in time. But in the meantime, we have really, really powerful bishops and cardinals who are calling him out, and I think that's another sign that God is with his church, and we continue to hope and pray for the best there as well.
Yeah, and the I keep butchering his name because I'm saying Vigano, but it's, tell me again the pronunciation.
Archbishop Vigano, yeah, it's fine, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
He was, and you tell me, but my understanding was he was always a prophet. He was always trying to restore the church. Because, for instance, with financial mess too, he was just a force for righteousness. Yeah, and to see him silenced, it's heartbreaking. But again, there's no stones to be thrown here. It's like, this is politics. This is the way of the world. This is the way of, and the devil is always infiltrating. He's always attacking. He's always attacking.
Exactly right. I would encourage your readers, I think from a Protestant point of view, evangelical point of view, it's just as fascinating as from the Catholic point of view, to look up something called the Catacombs Pact, or the Pact of the Catacombs. Absolutely look this up. Because herein is where you find a decision that was made and an event that took place in 1965 underneath the street. It sounds like something out of a Dan Brown movie or novel, but it's true. A bunch of the left wing, mostly South American council fathers decided to meet underneath the streets of Rome at the Domitilla Catacomb to have this thing. They signed a pact saying they were going to tear down the old Catholic Church, and they were going to build up a church of the poor. And they were going to remove all the titles and all of this stuff. And the leader of this thing, it turns out, I happened to discover later on, people want to check out one of our videos. He also attracted the attention of a young Klaus Schwab, and was invited to speak at the World Economic Forum in the early 1970s. So what you see with this Pact of the Catacombs is this direct link between the builders of this New World Order and the Second Vatican Council to try to knock the Catholic, whatever you think of the Catholic Church, she was a bulwark for morality, a powerful, She had the ability back for, I always think it's
Yeah.
interesting, back in the 20s and 30s, to even block Hollywood. Hollywood had
Yeah.
to cater to the Catholic Church, or they couldn't
Yes.
sell any movies anymore.
Yep.
So she
Yep.
was a powerhouse. They took her down. It's all very intentional, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And Pope Francis is a disciple of that pact of the catacombs. We're just watching. This isn't even a conspiracy theory. This is just something that's unfolding in front of our eyes. And it kind of gives you an idea of the human element that's at work here to bring about what we would call, and we all know that that sounds very conspiratorial, the New World Order. Well, I'm sorry, but it seems like there are people who are pretty serious about that, and they're into the church and outside of the church.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, the barbarians have broken through the gates and
Yeah.
they're behind the walls. There's no doubt, and it's the same in the Protestant world. I'm familiar with a very large Christian organization, and yeah, it's kind of it's not sexual sin, but very much ideological attack from within, and just destruction from within. It's just amazing to watch. So you've kind of continuing in that vein of the main attacks. What are the main threats? You went to the New World Order, the Great Reset. Can you talk about that and help people understand what that is? Too many people have a very fuzzy idea. They know something's off. So let's put our tinfoil hats on. I don't truly believe that, but from the perspective of some, and let's talk
Yeah.
about what that is.
Yeah, again, it simply is not a conspiracy theory. It is a conspiracy
Yes.
in the sense that you have powerful people who are very open and they're working together on this. And basically, the whole point and purpose of this great reset. Of course, I think there was a little bit of a stumble. COVID didn't work out quite like
Yeah.
the vaccination thing didn't work out quite like
Yeah.
they thought. But what they had hoped to do was use COVID to sort of bring about this great reset. And the great reset essentially is you're going to have corporations rather than governments controlling the future of the world. And so rather than, for example, in our country, rather than having a majority opinion and a democratic approach to who's going to be elected, how things are going to be governed, and we all know this is happening, but we couldn't put our fingers on it. All of a sudden, the will of the people obviously doesn't make any difference anymore.
Yeah.
And what you're seeing is corporate control. So you might
Yeah.
need 100,000 people involved with corporations, global corporations, to come to a consensus now, which is a lot easier than getting billions or millions of people to come to a consensus. And that's simply what we're being ruled by. And that's what happens over in Davos. They bring all these Bill
Yeah.
Gates, all these powerful people together to determine how the future is going to look, and to use things like climate change and electric vehicles and digital IDs and all of these things discussions about those things in order to implement this ability to have a new power system throughout the whole world, a global power control. Mostly using, of course, health. World Health Organization that's a very powerful thing. When you're worried about your health and other people are worried about their health, you can control people,
Security,
as we
fear.
saw during COVID.
Yeah.
So I think that the Great Reset is unfolding all around us right now. People don't want to necessarily admit it because it seems so preposterous. But if you think about who's running our country right now, these are the kind of things that are easily confirmed. I mean, they put a man up there who never ran for president, but was stuck himself in his basement and was basically in his dotage, right? Because, in my opinion, they wanted to demonstrate that executive office thing is no longer necessary, it's no longer important. There's something else running all the governments, not just our government. And that's why they got rid of Trump, because Trump was like, hey, I like America, and I'm going to run this like a company, and we're going to make America great again. Well, they wanted to make sure that never happens again, So you can kind of see how the president has lost his ability. He's really not in control. He's not the guy calling the shots anymore, and that's been borne out beautifully over the past few weeks now. So the Great Reset is really, honestly, I would go and just we had one called The Great Reset and the Plot to Cancel Donald Trump, which if you can forgive a plug, that was one of our highest
No
videos.
problem.
Had like 30 million views or something, and it really got into who's involved with it. And I would recommend that your folks go and watch that video. It's on YouTube right now. Unbelievably, it made it through. So
Yeah.
because like I say, it's not a theory. They're real proud of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and is this for the audience? This my next question. See, we haven't rehearsed this, but I'm gonna and tell me if this is a little too vague. There was a major change in our political laws, and I'm terrible with time. I'm trying to think how far back it was that really opened the floodgates on corporate power to run over the rights of the normal citizen. It was a complete upending of democracy. Can you think of what I'm asking you about in the last, was it 10, 15 years ago?
Well, it's not the Patriot Act, right?
No, it was that corporations were
Corporate.
yes.
And
Go ahead.
nothing's coming to mind right now. There's been so much
Okay.
of that, so much of
Yeah,
that. You
sorry.
know,
Well,
a few
it's a
things that
terrible
stick out.
question. I framed it terribly. It was terribly vague. So, but what I'm referring to, you'll remember, is that that corporate donations were very much capped in the past. It was very small, and because obviously they can absolutely outstrip giving and spending compared to individuals. So where democracy was very tied up with the rights of the individual and the expression and voice of the individual, all of a sudden the corporations were unleashed in their full giving. And this was done by the Republicans.
Yeah,
And I'm
that's the thing.
like, as seemingly a defense against what was going on, but it's just like, what a disaster.
Yeah, yeah, and you really saw how it worked. It didn't matter what a given governor was going to do. For example, if Delta Airlines said you got to wear a mask or you got to be vaxxed or whatever, that was what was going to happen. And if
Yeah.
COVID was a great little test case or a laboratory situation where you
Yeah.
could see how it was going to play out,
Yeah.
and that was easy because flying was very specific. But you could see the power of the airlines, the corporate authority or power at work. And I just think that obviously that's going to work across the board on everything, especially if they get into all this, social credits and so forth, and kind of how many, what kind of a threat you pose to your fellow citizens. I mean, I know it sounds crazy, but as crazy as it is, there are people who are just this crazy. People like Klaus Schwab who's dead serious about it.
Devoted their
So
life to it.
it doesn't do us any good to say he's an idiot, so who cares? He's a nut. Well, you can say that all day long, but this guy's got every single power broker in the world coming to
Look who he's
download
attracting.
whatever he
Yes.
wants. Yeah. So they're up to something, Go find out what it is.
Absolutely. Yeah. Any other great threats to the church?
Great threats to the church. I think right now, I mean, I guess what always comes to mind when anybody asks me a question like that is education of our children. So I'm a huge advocate of homeschooling, and I acknowledge the difficulty of homeschooling. I acknowledge that not everybody's called to do it. I acknowledge that there
Yep.
are some great
Yep.
little Christian schools, great little
But
private schools, but if you can do it, I think that's one of the big problems in the world today. You have really good people who are dedicated. They might be very open to life. They're having 6, 7, 8 kids. They put them in these schools, and
yeah.
very soon thereafter, they lose their kids, and they don't know what they did wrong. You didn't do
Yeah.
anything wrong, other than you put them in. Basically, you gave them to the government to raise,
Yes.
and that's going to happen.
Great,
So,
great propaganda mill to the destruction of the Faith Academy. Oh my gosh. Like people
absolutely,
wake up. Oh.
yeah, yeah.
And just for grins, what network are you guys, if you're involved in a homeschool network, what network are you guys involved in?
We have one. There's a couple. There's one, a Catholic one called Queen of Heaven, which is online. This is the thing. If your folks, some of your people are new to this, and they think it's still, you're the poor, housewife sitting across the table from 15 kids, and there's chickens in the kitchen, and everything's just going crazy. And the dad comes home and says, "Hell, I'm going to learn them. Me and the missus are going to learn them at home," or whatever. I mean, that's completely changed now. There's so many resources that you have.
Yeah.
Including some really good. I'm not the type that says, "Why don't we plug our kids into an online, DVD all day long?" 'Cause they're gonna go completely insane, boredom.
Yeah, yeah.
But there are really great interactive things now where you can have,
Yeah.
real live teachers and real time teaching, and they
Yeah.
get to make friends. And there's the tutor option is getting stronger, where you can bring very trusted friends who are or people in the community who are tutors into your home, and
Yeah.
So I think there's one of our sponsors is called Our Lady of Victory Homeschool out in California. In Post Falls, Idaho. There are a lot of great systems and there's Seton. One of the Catholic ones that's been around forever is called Seton Homeschool. I just think there's so much. The first thing you have to do is just have a really serious conversation, and it's not just about the obligation of homeschooling. I don't know what you do, but with us,
We homeschool.
oh, good. So we're towards the end of it now, and what's been really fun is finding out this huge benefit. We never had the crazy rebellious years, and my kids are not saints, but for the most part, the family stayed pretty tight. They've
Yeah.
all gone off to college. Half of them are college graduates. All of them are very close to the family. They're all very serious Catholics still. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, we have a very tight family. So as difficult as homeschooling is, if you can go through and come out the other side, you spare yourselves a lot of the really terrible, unfortunate,
Yeah.
sad nightmare that people are going through
Yeah.
when they do find a great big wedge between themselves and their children. So there is an amazing payoff in homeschooling. I just can't say enough about it, to get that conversation started.
Yeah, my niece does youth ministry in the Catholic Church, And oh boy, the horror stories she tells me about what kids are facing in the secular high schools
Yeah.
and how they get bullied and beat up and even made fun of constantly. And it's just I'm trying to think of you probably know there was some TV show of the last couple of years, and it had the Spider-Man actress in it that was depicting high school life today,
Okay.
and it was all the rage. And I looked at one or two of these, I was like, you just wanted to vomit. It was so debased and so sad and depressing. And as a dinosaur, you think, well, it's Hollywood. It can't be that bad. And I was talking to her. She's like, oh, no, that is it.
Yeah.
That's what you're seeing that's real.
Exactly right.
Oh
Yeah,
gosh.
exactly
Yeah.
right. You
And
can't.
go
It's
ahead, brother.
it's just so hard for, I mean, for even for somebody like, I don't know exactly how you were, but like, high school in the 80s and all of that. And I thought we were having trouble back then with
Yeah.
Madonna and Prince or something. But you look at it now and it's unrecognizable. I just feel so bad for people whose kids are getting sucked into that now.
Yeah, and I think maybe to turn the conversation on its head a little, because we've been looking at threats, but what's the need? And what I'm hearing from you, I haven't heard the word yet, but in evangelical circles, we're just constantly saying, I'm constantly banging the drum. We just need revival, and the Lord wants His people, their hearts to be revived.
Yeah.
He wants His people's hearts to be devoted to Him, and to be fully given over, and to say that the world system has nothing for me. It can't. We all need a little money. We need this, but there's nothing. You've gone on a few decades, so there's nothing it can offer you of substance. And so we
Every,
desperately. You think about who He is. He everywhere His river goes, He heals. He brings to life. He raises the dead, and He regenerates. That's His force. And so He's constantly wanting to work through us and to pour into the world around us, because the dead are all around us, and they're desperately afraid of death. And yet we are kowtowed because of career and all these different things and wanting to fit in. And it's
yeah.
like our hearts and our churches need revival.
Absolutely. Well said. It's so true. And the only thing I would add to that is let's stop playing the victim all the time, and let's
Yes.
understand the pearl of great price that we've got. I mean, as fathers, we tell the stories to our children about the great heroes of Christianity, don't we? Like we tell their stories, these marvelous, amazing people who kept the faith and who were alive at a time where everything seemed to go dark. And it was through the witness of these little children, oftentimes, who were willing to die for Christ, that the greatest civilization in the history of humanity was born, Christendom. The greatest, it built Europe. It was so powerful. So I always say to people like, I'm not sitting here whining about this. I say to my kids, we have the greatest honor of our lives. Of course there's an obligation involved here, but we're telling the story of the heroes. If we do this right, just on a human level, we have the chance to have somebody in future generations telling our stories as the ones that held on. And this is like to be a part of history, that God puts you here for a reason, and that this is the greatest honor of our lives.
Such a time as this. Yeah.
We should talk about this every day. And like, don't be so worried. No, don't empower them. Yes, they're evil, and yes, they're bad, but we have Jesus Christ on our side. We have the church on our side. We have the Bible. We have the power of Almighty God to stand against, as children of light, to stand against these children of dark. It should be the greatest novel, the greatest movie, the greatest adventure of our lives if we can just hold on to what we believe and sincerely believe in our hearts. We're invincible. And we know how this ends. God wins in the end. Nothing to worry about. Just fight.
I don't know if you've ever thought about this, but just listening to you, it's almost like that the Lord always has a remnant somewhere. And it's like, no matter, the joke is you haven't, I know you've thought about this and, but that the Lord has His. And we really just need to take Him at His word and to stand up and say, I got nothing, but I got you, Lord. Whatever I have, He is the King of taking a few loaves and fishes and doing something great with it. And that's all we have. We have a few loaves and fishes.
Yeah.
And we need to slide it over to Him and say, but it's all I have and it's yours. Use me, speak through me, Father, restore the world through me. My little role, whatever you want to do.
Yeah. I always think that, like, back when we were young, when we were boys, the seduction was much more powerful. The evil was much more clever, in my opinion. I think back to like pop stars in the movies, and the thing that was so seductive and it was so beautiful in a dark kind of way.
The way Satan is, yeah.
What's happening now is
Yeah.
just the opposite. I mean, they
Yeah.
want to take children and they want to cut off their private parts and they want to stick things into their faces and do. I mean, it's really horrific, Frankensteinian stuff. So
Yes.
I think that's another concentration that we can the card that we can play with our own kids and our own young people. You don't actually want to end up like this, do you? You want to stay a little boy. You want to stay a little girl, right? You want to stay a son of, or a daughter of Jesus, right? It's so much more attractive than. I think it's so much more. I think it's easier to stay where we belong than it was even back in the '80s when the seduction was newer and more effective.
Yeah, and for anybody listening out there, just in case you think Michael's a troglodyte for saying that, go look at some videos of people who went through sex change, and they realized it was a huge mistake, and they were actually duped by their advisors and medical professionals, and now
Absolutely.
their body's been disfigured.
Yeah.
Oh my
yeah.
gosh.
So sad. So sad.
I wonder if maybe we'll finish on this and we'll see. But I saw you mentioned you did a little short on it's the Kansas City Chiefs kicker Butker.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what an interesting story. Let's pull that apart a little bit. And so he was just set it up a little. He was doing a commencement speech, and what did he say? And then what happened after that?
He said what our fathers and mothers were saying every day when just 20 years ago. I mean, it was nothing that revolutionary.
Nope.
He was talking. It was a homeschool, kind of a hybrid academy that he was speaking at, and he basically just said, you have to be Catholic. We want you to stay true to your traditions. You have to stay true to your roles as your gender. What's gender appropriate for you, for your wife, for your husband. To have the children, to be open to life, to serve God, to not get into the woke culture. That was essentially what he even was a little critical of the bishops. He would say of Catholic bishops. In other words, he's not like this holier than thou guy who's like, I'm Catholic and y'all are going to hell. He actually had the courage to say, where are the bishops? The bishops are fathers. They should be saying these things. And if they're not going to say it, well, I'm going to say it. So he just said what was basic catechetical stuff to anybody who grew up in the 90s and the 80s and 90s, certainly for me. Would have heard in Catholic school, basic stuff. But because it's no longer being said and reinforced by, like in our case, by the bishops and the Pope, it came across as bomb-throwing and insane. And the really beautiful thing is, at least my takeaway from it was, there was all this talk that Butker was going to lose his job, and he was going to get thrown out, and all of a sudden, like within a few days, his jersey's the #1 in the country, incling his
Is that right?
The female Butker jersey, #1 in the country. Supposedly he offended all the women. But they went out and bought his jersey, #1. He gets a top. I don't know what the dollar amount was on his contract that he signed, but he did really, really well. He's still out there talking and saying the right thing. And I think there really is the Butker story for me. There's a massive hunger and yearning and longing for somebody to speak what everybody's thinking, but everyone's too afraid to say it. So. People of influence, and even if you don't have influence, whatever influence you have, but certainly people of influence have a tremendous opportunity right now to literally change history by standing up and saying what everyone else is afraid to say, but millions want to hear, So I think that's the takeaway from Butker. It was a fantastic moment. Really proud of him.
Yeah, and, if you're going to get this one completely, but it's like, our friends on the other side of the political fence who were super tolerant, just absolutely ripped him apart and shredded him and tried to put him in the public stocks and make an example of him. And then they go to Kansas City Chiefs, the football chief, and say, "What are you going to do with this guy?" And all the pressure. And so if you're under any illusion, that should open your mind up. I'm speaking to the audience. That should open your mind up to what's going on.
Yeah.
He went against the liberal, the materialist, far left, anti-God catechism.
Yeah.
And they did everything to silence him and to shut him up and to punish him. Those people who were so tolerant.
Oh
and
my
it's like
gosh.
They're not interested in tolerance. This is
at
war.
all. Yeah, not at all. And by the way, they've been very silent since he did take a little shot at Trump. So he's not just a partisan guy. When Trump started going soft on abortion a few days ago, Butker's right out there, man. He went after Vance. He said, "Don't do this, brother. You're a Catholic. You can't do this." So this is courage, and this is going against his own little tribe. You know what I mean? They always accuse us of tribalism. No, he's not. He's on the side of Jesus Christ. That's whose side he's on. Doesn't matter if you're Republican or Democrat. He's going to, and that's where we all need to be. We all need to say, no, this is what we need to do, and it's what we need to say.
Oh, Well, my friend, this has been rich beyond belief. I just have enjoyed this so much. You
Me
are
too.
so articulate and deep thinker and such a student of the age. And let's go out in prayer. Father
All
God, I
right.
just lift up my brother. I lift up the Catholic Church. I lift up the Protestants. Lord, all those who are yours, Father. We just call out to you. And we want to see your flag lifted up. We want to see you lifted up. You'll draw all men to yourselves, Father. And so we just offer up the little we have. We have a few loaves and fishes, and we give them to you, Father. And we say, multiply. And we cry for revival. We cry for revival in our hearts, most of all in the Catholic Church, in the Protestant churches, that this cowardice would end, and we would say, we are with the Lord, and that is our lot. And whatever happens from there, that is our lot, and that's what we believe in. It's the only hope for the world. So anoint your brother, speak through him. My brother, Lord, speak through this man. Anoint, let the word go out. We call out to you, Father, for your righteousness and your flag to be lifted up. We pray all this in the name of Jesus.
Amen. Thanks very much for that, Jeff. That's beautiful.
All
Thank you.
right, my brother. Thank you so much, and God bless you.
Life Audio.